Jack M. here. I have what I believe to be a unique experience to share, not because I had a NDE, but how I recovered from it. Some years ago, I was at Lake Chelan in Washington state. I was around 15 feet below the surface when I was cut by nail or something sharp that caused me to gasp. When I did, water poured into my mouth and into my body. I say poured because there was no gulping or gasping, but more like fuel being pumped into a car. After a few moments, I blacked out. The next thing I knew, I was watching a kind of movie of my life. Not a whole life story as some people experience, but only some great and happy childhood memories. I don't know how long this lasted, but after this I was in a tunnel and out of body. I realized that my body was behind me, but I was afraid to turn around and look. But then, being of a nature that is very analytical, I began taking an interest in the tunnel itself. There was an array of colors, not bright like psychedelic colors, but rather pastel and soothing. They rotated with the entire tunnel, in a way like colors move in a kaleidoscope. I can remember vividly being extremely aware of moving further and further into this tunnel and being fully aware of having all the natural feelings of having a body but not being able to see it. For example, I would move my fingers and all the sensations were there without a physical form to identify them with. I never saw a bright light before me, or any god figures or anyone. I just continued deeper and deeper into the tunnel and I was having a great time of it. Then, in some unexpected moment, the thought occurred to me that I was dying. I swore a few cuss words and said, in effect, to hell with this. At this very moment, I was back in my body, awake and alert. Now here is where I believe the story gets interesting. I would later learn that I had been underwater for a good 5 to 6 minutes. I remind you that I had taken in a lot of water before passing out. Well, I recovered in perfect shape. I sat at the bottom as an experienced swimmer and scuba diver looking for the sunlight so I would know which direction was up. I found it, and swam to the surface and to the dock where I lifted myself up with no sign at all that I had just nearly drowned. I was in perfect shape, feeling ever as good and as healthy before this NDE ever occurred. This recovery is, quite frankly, more curious to me than the tunnel experience since it seems to me that my lungs should have been filled or maybe I should have been weak or something, but it was truly as if I had simply been out for a good swim and nothing more. In fact, I walked back to the lodge where I was staying, took a shower, dressed and went to work. A good swim and nothing more. In fact, I walked back to the lodge where I was staying, took a shower, dressed and went to work. I thought nothing more about the incidents until some years later, when people started reporting NDEs and my wife read me some account and I said, hey, that's what happened to me. There is one other thing that you might find interesting. Around 5 years ago I was in the hospital and the doctors had been giving me a very strong painkiller for weeks. Then they took me off of it and this sent me into hallucinations. Here's what I find important to share about this. I can tell you that I have had a NDE and I have had hallucinations and they are absolutely not the same. When one has an hallucinations, there is always that experience of being an observer. This isn't to say that one doesn't from time to time get into the hallucination and assume it to be an actual experience, but even at this, the experience is nothing like a NDE. Here is the difference explained. A person has conscious awareness during a NDE no less than you're having right now if you are reading these words. That is, you are aware that you are reading, aware of the room you're in and aware of what is outside the room. This is not how one experiences a hallucination. A hallucination seems to be a total experience, but there is a lack of, real, awareness of anything outside the experience itself. That is, a person is really seeing and feeling whatever circumstances he is in during the hallucination, and these images are absolutely real to him. If he is being chased by a tiger, he has all the feelings of fear, running, and so forth. But he cannot project his thoughts into the next room or out of frame, so to speak. One can during a NDE.